This week on Art in the Air features the power couple in the Chicago art scene, Dr. Yanina Gomez and Sergio Gomez, founders of Art Nxt Level, that guides artists how to build a productive art practice. Next, we have Marla Showfer, who curates artists from remote regions of the globe. Our spotlight is on the Depot Gallery and Museum's 5x5 exhibit, plus a preview of the 2023 exhibit season.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM and WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming at WVLP.org, and every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available on our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our shows are available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for more information about upcoming shows and interviews. Art on the Air is now available on WDSO 88.3 FM Chesterton on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. And we'd like to welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight Suzy Vance, and she's going to be representing the Depot, which is, of course, in Beverly Shores, just off of Route 12 there, and we're going to talk about their 2023 season of everything going on. Suzy just stepped down as kind of the curator, but, of course, she's still very much involved with it. And
I'm the president.
She's the president, so there we go. Suzy, welcome.
I got rid of one of my jobs.
Well, welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight, and let's talk about what's going on there.
Well, what's going on is an amazing season, both in the Depot and in the gallery, and they are collaborating, which is nothing short of sensational. We, of course, have our first item, which is we celebrate the veterans in May, and then in May as well, we have our largest fundraiser of the year, which is the 5x5, where artists donate artwork that is 5 inches by 5 inches, and people buy tickets online and then rush in to claim their artwork on the 12th of May this year.
That sounds so much fun. I know I've contributed a couple things in the past there for that. It's just such an event, and it's like a real happening there at the Depot. Even just the fact of going in, but everyone kind of, breaking out from the winter doldrums.
Exactly. We're coming out. And then in June, we have the quilts. We have the National Museum of Mexican Art that is coming in with the assistant curator is bringing quilt makers with her. We're having an exhibit of storytelling quilts in the gallery. And in the Depot, we're going to honor the women who made the quilts about Beverly Shores, which is really something. And then, in July, we're having architecture. In the museum, there will be items that show you what architecture there is in the city of Beverly Shores. And we actually have 11 landmark buildings, in addition to which we have many other people who live in houses created by famous architects. And in the museum, we are having artists who have created artwork around in any medium. It can be even in one of those little things that kids play with. We told them they could even do that with logos. It's just Legos. It's really fun. And then in August, we are having Sharon Hoogstraten, who is a Potawatomi, and she is celebrating the Dancing with the Tribes, the Potawatomi and the New Millennium. We're hoping to have Indian dancers. We're going to just have quite a time. And in the museum, we're going to have early settlers and American or area Native Americans. And then in September, we're having Gone But Not Forgotten 2, which is the houses not on the lakeshore, but everywhere else in Beverly Shores that were taken by eminent domain, and a show by Chris Cassidy, who is very inspired and doing lots of fabulous photography. And then, of course, we move into our holiday season with our holiday show and sale that'll be in the month of December.
Wow, that's quite a year, Suzy.
And I haven't even mentioned the film festival that we are heading up, which is in collaboration with the Memorial Opera House. That's happening on the 10th of August. On the 11th of August will be that opening that I talked about with Sharon Hoogstraten. There is a collaboration with the Michigan City Library where she will be giving a lecture. And we will finish August out with Social Q Barbecue, which we're having on the 19th of August in the parking lot in Beverly Shores.
Oh, so nice.
It's just going to be a very exciting year. I can't wait.
And so anything you're doing with your art personally, being out there and everything? I mean, now that you're not directly curating, still president of the organization, but tell us about some of the things Suzy's doing.
Well, I have forsaken my fiber art for podcasting, for video podcasting. If you want to know about that, you can go to Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living, or just type in Suzy Vance. Either one of those will do on YouTube. And you'll see once a week I drop an interview with someone who has found an amazing life and an amazing way to be creative in their work. So
that's great. Can you tell us a little bit, and we hope to get her on, Meg, who's your new curator there.
New curator, she's fabulous. She was the head of the Museum and Art Gallery at Aurora University and retired and was trying to find a place in Northwest Indiana because one of her daughters lives here in Valparaiso. And lo and behold, she stumbled on Beverly Shores. She was looking for a place that was in the trees, in the woods, as she says. And she found it, which is absolutely blessing for us.
That's fantastic.
She's our curator.
That's great. Well, with less than a minute left, just give us a quick recap on the close upcoming events.
Though the close ones are the 5x5, which happens on May 12th, and you buy your tickets online at bsdepot.com, and then you take it and present it on the day, and then you get a sticker, and at 5 o'clock the doors open, and you hope you're the first to be able to put your sticker on an item, and nobody gets to see the items before 5 o'clock.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. That's Suzy Vance, the president of the Depot in Beverly Shores, and that's 525 South Broadway, just off of 12 there. Thank you so much for coming in Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the full 1-hour Art on the Air program on Lakeshore Public Radio is brought to you by Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brec.com. That's aota@brec.com. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM. Art on the Air is now available on WDSO 88.3 FM Chesterton on Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
We are pleased to welcome Dr. Yanina Gomez and Sergio Gomez to Art on the Air. Dr. Yanina is an author and speaker. She has a PhD in psychology and is trained in the internal family system model. She helps artists boost self-confidence and overcome self-sabotage. Yanina is also the author of several books: Moms Don't Quit, How to Influence, Empower, and Stay Connected with Your Tween and Teen in a Noisy World, and Crush Self-Sabotage and Live Fully, the Artist's Wellness Journey to Confidence and Success. She's also married to Sergio. Sergio is the owner of 33 Contemporary Gallery, curator for the Xiaobi Art Center in Chicago, and founder of SergioGomezCurates.net. As an artist, Sergio has exhibited internationally in galleries and museums. He uses his social media mastery to promote, sell, and advance his art and curatorial projects. Sergio and Dr. Yanina are the founders of Art Nxt Level Academy. Thank you both for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We are super excited.
Super happy to be here. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Larry, for our chat.
We are so glad to have you. Well, Yanina, we're going to start out with your origin story, as much as you'd like to share beyond the biography. So tell us about your origin, how you got from where you were to where you are now.
That's a very interesting question. I was born in Puerto Rico. So over 30 years ago, my family moved to Illinois. And so we've been in this area for over 30 years. And I went to, had my bachelor's degree. And then I went on to doing my master's degree and then my doctorate degree. Sergio and I have been married for almost 26 years, and we have 2 children. Yeah.
And so where did you two converge? How did you meet?
We met at Governor State University when we both were completing our masters. So he's one of his masters. He completed at Governor State, and that's where we went. So it was very interesting because the art department was on the other side of one side of the university, and the psychology department was completely on the opposite direction of the university. But we both were involved in a leadership club at the university, and that's where we met. Yeah.
Very good.
How worlds collide is so interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. If it was not for that club at the university, we probably would have not met.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Sergio, we want to hear your origin story, how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Mexico City, which, is a big city. And, if you had asked me back then, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I thought I wanted to be an architect because I didn't think that you could actually make a living as an artist. I didn't meet a living artist until I came to the United States, which happened in 1988. Of course, I saw a lot of art in Mexico and museums and Diego Rivera's, all the muralists, but I never actually met one, who said, I'm an artist. So I came here in 1998, went to high school. Our high school teacher said, hey, have you considered to follow an art career? And like, oh, can you do that? He's like, yeah, why don't you go to community college? So I went to Joliet Junior College, took every art class that they had in their curriculum. Then I realized, I guess I must keep going. So went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Then I transferred to Governor State, where I finished my BA and then did an MA, and then went to Northern Illinois, where I received my MFA. So I kind of like one thing led to another, trying to discover this life in art, and that's kind of how it all happened. So we graduated from master's program, and of course the question is like, what are you going to do with an art degree? Like, I don't know. Right? So,
it's still a big question.
I guess that's why I kept postponing my graduation, right? So that the question when it comes. So after that, because I've always also loved technology and design, I work right away out of school as a graphic designer, and then at the same time, started looking for a space to have a studio and to open a gallery. I've always loved the idea of not only making the art, but also behind the scenes of how art kind of moves in the world. And that kind of, led to opening the gallery and then the studio and then becoming a curator and then eventually working with artists, as well. So kind of one thing just led to the next.
And I have a fun fact. When we married, again, almost 26 years ago, right away, we told each other, like, eventually, we don't know how this is going to happen, how this is going to manifest, or how this is going to look like. But eventually, we are going to end up working together.
Yeah, we would like to work together.
We would like to, yeah, we would like to work together. And we back then we're like, okay, a psychologist and an artist, how in the world they're going to be working together? And little did we know that was the first sign of the Art Nxt Level Academy.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we both found it. So,
it's called manifesting in its ultimate beauty.
Yeah. It was a very interesting fact.
Right.
Well, Yanina, you're an author, and you have an experience in that. So tell us a little bit about your authorship. I know that's not directly art related, but I mean how that kind of melded into that. But tell us all about your books and your background and doing that.
Oh, yes. My first book is titled Moms Don't Quit, as Esther shared in the intro. And this is a book for, actually, even though it's titled Moms Don't Quit, it's a book for parents, for children, preteens and teens, which the reason why I decided to write a book for parents of preteens and teens is because, as we all know, it's a very difficult developmental stage in our children's life. And the changes and the stressors that go into being a preteen and teen, we all feel it in the family. And there were not that many resources available for parents of children that age. And I felt compelled and a strong desire, and I was very excited about writing a book. I worked before doing what I'm doing now. I practice as a psychologist, and for many years I worked for school districts. So I work in the school system. So I was able to work with younger children, and including preteens and teens and their parents. So to me, it was very important as a psychologist to provide parents with the tools they need to raise healthy children. So I did that quite a lot, and wish from that experience that I have with all those parents that I work with and my own personal experience with our children, I was able to write the book Moms Don't Quit.
Except I want to talk about Moms Don't Quit for a minute.
Okay, sure.
I think you have it for like tweens to teens, but as I read it, I really think it's valuable no matter what age your children are, even if they are adults. There's such valuable advice in that book. So thank you.
Yeah, and I also encourage younger parents or parents of younger children to read that book so they can get those tools and strategies that they need. They can prepare beforehand, because we're always thinking, my child's only 5 or 6. I still have time. But the truth is that time flies by so quickly, that on a blink of an eye, your child goes from 5 to 15. So it's a good book for parents to prepare themselves of what is going to be ahead. So I recommend it for any parent who have any children younger than 18.
I know it's really such great practical advice. So many times these advice books will say a big statement, but don't give you any way to follow through with that big statement. And yours is just very easy to follow.
Thank you. And the way I write books, my writing style is that I imagine my reader with me in a coffee shop, that we're having a conversation. So, when you talk to a friend, it's casual. It's like, we're just talking about life and things like that. I'm not going to be using all these technical words to talk to a friend, which is what I have found to be more effective when it comes to teaching strategies to anyone to improve their lives in one way or another. So and that book it also comes with a inner reflection journey, a downloadable that parents can download and complete as they are reading the book. Because I believe that in order for a book to make a difference, you don't just read it, you have to take action. You have to do something about it for changes to happen. And with that downloadable inner reflection exercises that I put together, they're designed to help my reader to understand what's going on, to reflect on what's happening at home and what's happening within themselves, what's going on in their inner world that is manifesting in the way they raise their children or the way they interpret their children. So it is intended to help and guide the reader through a journey of change. So that's Moms Don't Quit. And the second book that I co-wrote, actually that one I wrote it with Sergio, the lead author, but Sergio is the author of the book Crush, Self-Sabotage, and Live Fully. That's the newest book. It just came out last year. The Artist's Wellness Journey to Confidence and Success. And this is specifically written for artists, for creatives. And the difference with this one is that the inner reflections exercises are part of the book. It's not a downloadable. We make sure that each chapter has a section that is specifically for all these inner reflection exercises for the reader to apply the things that they have learned and create change in their life. So
that's
we wrote
a deeper dive, right?
Yes,
that's what you said,
yes.
the deeper dive.
So that book, it was a fun project. Each chapter is divided in 3 different sections. The first one is the teachings that I provide. The second part is Sergio's take, and basically that section is Sergio. After he read what I wrote, he's like, okay, as a creative, this is how I interpret it and how I use it. And then the dive in deeper section, which is the third part, is the reader's part. And that's the one that I provide different exercises for the reader to, again, take action so change can happen.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive. I love that Sergio, it's like real life, real time experiences. And that's so valuable, rather than like something obscure.
Yeah, and that was the idea, so to kind of bring the conversation home to the artist studio and say, how does this relate to me as an artist? How do I, go from one day working in the studio and feeling great, the next day doubting myself? Is this
right? I have struggles too.
It happens to us even sometimes within the next hour, right? We love it, then we hate it. So, kind of dealing with that and helping artists realize that those voices, those notions, it's not means that something is wrong with you. It's just how do we work along with that and make the best out of our time. Yeah.
Well, one of the questions before we move on to, we bounce off of what you did with the book and, your project in helping artists. Tell us a little bit about your art yourself, how, your origin in terms of what your style is, what you do, mediums you work in. Just, we want to explore that before we get into helping artists.
Right. So really quickly, my art is I work on acrylic, on paper. I love paper. Paper usually is an adhered to canvas, large scale. Think of my paintings as the size of a door, and inside each door there's a figure, and my figures are in an abstract manner. You will see the figure as a shadow or as an aura, energy, light. However, that's how people may describe it. And my work is inspired by the cycles of life, from birth to death, and or spiritual awareness throughout those cycles. And this kind of began 25 years ago or so, and then amplified when my son was born 21 years ago, and kind of like seeing that life can begin to take shape, and then understanding the cycles in nature. I grew up in Mexico City, and Mexico City is pretty much beautiful weather year round. But when I came here to Chicago for the first time in my life, I was 16 and I saw winter, summer, and everything, snow and boiling temperatures.
Felt right? Winter.
So, exactly. Like, so this is what the other part of the world lives on. So that's kind of what inspired me. There are these cycles in life that we go through, and then also as human beings, what each cycle means. So I have kind of dedicated my artistic production to that, and along those ways also sometimes delving into other issues that are happening right now. For example, immigration, the Mexico-U.S. border. I've done a series on that as well. The suffering from that. So that's kind of
they were very powerful. I saw them. They're
thank you.
Yeah, very strong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the next thing, is that how you started getting into not only creating art, but helping artists. I know over the years, it's kind of been just watching it, a development that's developed into the podcast, and you do these other, little short bits too. But tell us what motivated you. Obviously, you wanted to help artists because you had the struggles yourself, and then how that developed into much more formally into the Art Nxt Level.
Yeah, I love breakfast with Sergio.
Yeah, breakfast with Sergio, exactly, right? So it all started pretty much, graduating from school, and I've always loved education. Dr. Inashi has always loved education too. We believe in the value of education. I invested a lot of my time also in higher education. But I always felt that, when I was in higher education, for as much as I loved it, I had to follow a curriculum, right? I had to teach what I was taught to teach. And there was a huge gap, also between what you learn in art school and then the real world, right? The things that you learn the hard way, making mistakes and doing things. So, the more we talk about this, like, well, I think, there's this huge gap where we can help artists because we are passionate about education. Eventually, I quit my tenure job of teaching and kind of, dedicate my life fully to the art and endeavor. And through also because working as a gallery director and curator, working with so many artists, and many who also came as artists who had questions like, hey, Sergio, how do I get in? How do I do this? Or the world is changing. Or in fact, many artists who, were at some point successful, then the world changed. Social media came around, the gallery changed, the gallery closed. So how do I market my art? So there was this whole gap of information where we felt that, we were good at explaining and talking. People seem to enjoy when we talk about those things. So why not? So we started sharing, and then from there, like, oh, wait, why don't we do a podcast? And the podcast came, and then why don't we do one-on-one sessions? And then how do we help more artists? And then we launched the online academy, the Art Nxt Level, both of us. And then one morning I was like, well, I don't have a whole lot of time, and I want video is hot, so I should do more videos. And like, well, I always have breakfast. I always enjoy breakfast. I'm going to start recording breakfast with Sergio. So that's how that started. So always kind of things to start finding an opportunity and try to be honest and trying to be helpful. I think that's the main focus that we have.
Yeah,
and you show it in your own artwork too, because you did the augmented reality with your work. So you're always pushing yourself and
Yeah, and then we saw that not only the business need in artists, but then it was interesting that once artists, before the Art Nxt Level Academy, once they found out what I do for a living, so then there will be many, especially during our opening nights in the gallery, there will be many artists that will come to me with their emotional
You had your
wellness.
corner, see the psychologist.
Just like Charlie Brown.
Like Charlie Brown.
But and throughout the years, and this is still when I was just practicing, throughout the years, I noticed a pattern of questions, a pattern of issues that are quite similar among creatives. So when we were talking about the academy, because it came to a point in my career that I wanted to do something different, that I got a little bit burned out. And it was a time that I said, I think I want to practice psychology in a non-traditional way. We just didn't know what that non-traditional way was until we, one year he was like, just quit and we will figure it out. And we did. And that's kind of like when we start seeing those emotional needs among artists. And I started to see the patterns. That's when we were talking about the Art Nxt Level Academy, we were like, okay, this is what we can do. We can provide support for those artists who want to make a business out of their art, and also provide mindset and emotional wellness support. And, things escalated to the point that we wrote the book, Crush Self-Sabotage and Live Fully.
Yeah. And we see the art career, as expanded, how everything starts in the mind, the work that you do in the studio, your creative
it's a wholeness
practice.
Approach.
Yeah, your creative practice, and then your business aspect. Of it.
You start from within, and what is happening within you it was manifest in the art form, whatever art form you choose. So that's why we found that there is a strong link between what is happening in your inner world with what you project in your art. The message, the values, the emotions that you project in your art. And sometimes and oftentimes artists get stuck and they don't know why. And oftentimes it has to do with, the lack of exploring what is going on, that inner dialogue that is happening, what's going on with those inner parts that might be conflicting with what you want to create as an artist. So yeah, it has been quite a journey and it has been amazing.
I know it's such a beautiful, not only you have obviously a beautiful marriage, but a very beautiful marriage of talents and sensibilities. And I'm so grateful that there was that meeting,
Yes.
that club.
Yes, exactly.
And without giving away any things from your Art Nxt Level, but I guess the scariest part for an artist, and I know coming from a theater background, for someone being an actor, is actually making the choice to do that. So you might have all this inner thing going, but now in the external world, how do I actually make a living doing this?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, and particularly because the world is changing and it's changing fast. Things that used to work 3 years, 5 years ago, maybe no longer work today. The moment you're learning how to do a long video, now you gotta do short videos, right? So the artist today has to be, at the cusp of how things change in the world in order to succeed, in order to be also at the forefront.
I know you have to catch that current wave.
Yes,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And just as a couple tips, how do you catch that current wave? Just with just a real brief thing.
So
Art Nxt Level.
First becoming aware that the world is changing and being adaptable. I think that's one of the biggest things right now. As an artist, you have to be adaptable. You cannot fall in love with procedures that used to work because the world is changing. It's not going to go back to the good old days. So, become adaptable. Become part of a community, which is super important right now as well.
Yeah, don't be alone.
Yeah, don't be
this
alone. Be part of our community or other communities. Just get along with other artists. Very important, and stay informed of how the world is changing.
So really marketing and networking as far as your external art is the important part of that. Like I tell actors, I say you're your own product, but you have to not take the rejection as a personal thing. It's the rejection of that.
No, not at all. And self-care. Yeah. Self-care is very, very important in order for marketing and networking to succeed.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we just have about a minute left, and we want to give you both times to give a website, contact information, so they can hook up with you, find about your breakfast things. I think you even see them on LinkedIn and things like that, but tell us all about how they can find out about you and any exhibits you have coming up.
All right. Well, we'll try to keep it within a minute. So you can find us on all social medias, Art Nxt Level, Art Nxt Level. That's where the educational platform. You can find me and Breakfast with Sergio in all social media platforms at Sergio Gomez Art. And Breakfast with Sergio happens live twice a week, usually either Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday, depends what's for breakfast. Diana, where can they find you?
Social media at Dr. Yanina Gomez, Dr. Yanina Gomez. Yeah. Yeah.
And our website.
And the website? Yes.
Yeah, the website, theartistnextlevel.com.
Excellent.
Or just Google in their names and so much will pop up.
There you go. There you go.
Well, we appreciate you coming on Art on the Air and sharing your not only life story, but how you're helping artists and your own art and how you've blended psychology with helping the creatives out there. Yanina and Sergio Gomez, thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air.
Oh, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Art on the Air listeners, do you have a suggestion for a possible guest on our show? Whether it's an artist, musician, author, gallery, theater, concert, or some other artistic endeavor that you are aware of, or a topic of interest to our listeners, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM. Art in the Air is now available on WDSO 88.3 FM Chesterton on Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
We are happy to welcome Marla Showfer to Art on the Air. Marla spent more than 25 years in corporate marketing when she decided to follow the winding road toward her passion of travel and exploring exotic places. Her love of discovery and shopping for the unique and unusual led her to develop partnerships with artisans in Nepal, India, Morocco, Peru, Bali, and Borneo. She works with artisans on product design, and her company, The Winding Road, handles importing, shipping, and sales. Marla has the most inspiring and beautiful story to tell about what her winding road has accomplished. Thank you, Marla, for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome. It is so good to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, Marla, we're excited to have you on the show. And, of course, what we always like to start off with our guests is kind of their origin story. I always like to say how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us all about Marla.
Okay, well, I grew up in Michigan, a suburb of Detroit called West Bloomfield. And when I was young, I always wanted to be an artist. I used to paint and draw and do ceramics and was not particularly encouraged by my family to pursue that as a career. But one thing I was very lucky to do is my mother particularly really loved travel. And as a young age, when other people were going to Florida, we would come back from spring break having gone to Morocco. So I did have quite a lot of ability to see the world and also notice at a pretty young age that there were people living, for example, in Morocco, extremely poor and on the street, and seeing that at a young age gave me a different type of view of the world. I ended up, fast forward a little bit, I went to Michigan State, studied advertising, and moved to Chicago and worked for many years in advertising agencies on big brands like Procter & Gamble, Motorola, and Hewlett Packard, and then ended up out in San Francisco working for Levi Strauss & Company. And I started my business called The Winding Road at age 50. So that was 12 years ago. Got laid off from a corporate job and said, I just don't see going back and working for a corporate job, and who's going to want to hire a 50-year-old woman anyway. So I kind of woke up that Monday morning and I said, I know I'm going to start a business, and it's going to be called The Winding Road. And I'm going to do what I love doing, which is traveling around the world and working with artisans and bringing their goods back to the U.S. My experience was in marketing, merchandising, design, and I had previous to that traveled a few times to, India and other places where I would just bring back stuff in my backpack and open it up. And all my friends would say, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. So my happiest excitement in the world is walking through a market in Egypt or Turkey, or Greece, and just seeing and noticing things that I've never seen before that I really want to bring back to the U.S. So on one of my trips, I decided to start my business by going to Nepal, where I had been the year before. And I wrote a business plan, and I knew I was going to bring back cashmere scarves and shawls. I knew what quantity I wanted to buy. I knew what I wanted to pay. And then I thought I would have this idea in my mind of how many I would sell. But while I was there, I walked into this tiny little 10 by 10 foot shop that this young guy with a big smile on his face was just opening for the first time with his wife. And he was putting things on the shelf. And I said, wow, these are really beautiful. And his goods looked different than anything else that was in the area. He got a little spot on a little touristy area, and his name is Madav. And I said, I can bring your things back to the US. I'm just starting a business, and I'm going to go to the San Francisco gift fair. And if I get orders, will you be able to quickly fulfill the orders? And of course, he was very eager to do business with an American. So he said yes. And I put his goods up in the little booth at Moscone Center in San Francisco. And my first two customers were the J. Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, who still, 12 years later, are still buying from us. They're still good customers. But Madav has a very interesting story. He just came to visit in January for 3 weeks, and it was his first trip to the U.S. He grew up in a small village outside in Nepal, outside of Kathmandu, with 68 families, one school room with a dirt floor. His family were water buffalo farmers, so he was out in the field herding water buffaloes as a kid without any shoes. He never saw TV or radio until he was 15 years old. So, if I think about, my background, like when I was a kid watching, anything on TV, the Galloping Gourmet or, travel shows or,
or actually traveling to Morocco when you were young.
Yeah. Or Wild Kingdom. I mean, just having access to all of this. He never saw a white person, and he never saw TV until he was 15. And then as a young adult, teenager, old teenager, young adult, moved to Kathmandu because there were no opportunities in his village. And he got a job in a t-shirt shop, learned English, interacted with tourists, and he had two dreams. One was he wanted to one day go to college, and two, he wanted to one day come to America. And so one day this Canadian tourist walks in and was talking to him, and he's very personable and friendly. And Madhav says, the guy's like, what do you want to do in life? And he goes, I want to go to college. And the guy said, well, how much does college cost? And he told him, and the guy's like, well, that's not that much. I'll pay for you to go to college. So he got to go to college. And then later he kept in touch with the guy. And then he wanted to get a master's degree in public health. And this Canadian man paid for his master's degree. So he started his business. I walked in, I was his first customer. And after a couple of years, I went to the New York Now, which is this big trade show in New York. We are in a showroom in the Atlanta, America's Mart in Atlanta twice a year. We have big shows there. And I am now in over 1,000 retail stores across the US, Canada. We are regularly shipping to Australia and all over Europe. So kind of leading up to COVID for a few years, suddenly he'd say, oh, we have 30 women artisans working on your goods. And I think, wow, that's amazing, because it just started out with him and his wife and like one person making things. And the artisans there in Nepal has a history of extreme poverty, where families who are very desperate may sell their daughters or wives or young women into human trafficking and the sex trade. And it's not uncommon. It can happen at the border with India. People can be taken to the Middle East and being told that they're going to be domestic servants in someone's home, but it goes beyond that. So all of these women that we employ would be at risk for human trafficking. Most of them have not been to school. The illiteracy rate among women in villages, rural areas, women my age, it's 90%. 90% of women have not been to school and cannot read and write. And sometimes, if you think about, you want to walk into a store and you want to see what's on a label, or you walk down the street and you want to see what's on the street sign, it makes someone, a woman, completely incapable of really being able to do anything if they can't.
Very
read,
vulnerable.
Right? Yes. So today, though, that's changing. The new generation in Nepal, 80-90% of kids are in school and can read and write. And that's changing a lot because women have the opportunity to work, to contribute to their household income, and then pay to send their kids to go to school, because the education system, the government-run education system, isn't very good. So if you want your kid to go to a good school, you have to pay a minimal amount. It's like $350 a year, which for us isn't a lot, but for them is quite a lot. So like leading into COVID, all of a sudden one day I was asking him, how many people are working now? And he said, we have 60 women working. And I was just blown away that my business is supporting 60 women in Nepal. And then right before COVID, it was 160 women. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe I started this business and I'm employing and giving livelihood and improving the lives of 160 women. Well, during COVID, our business actually grew, and I just kept getting more goods. I kept paying my suppliers, and a lot of other felt business. We make handmade felt goods is what we're selling from him, like ornaments and mobiles and stuff. But suddenly during COVID, I guess it wasn't that sudden, we ended up hiring more and more women artisans, and we now have 400 women artisans working on our goods in Nepal.
Wow.
Bravo.
And a lot of it happened during COVID, when our business really expanded quite a bit during that time.
And so that is just in Nepal. What about what's going on in all the other countries that you work with?
Well, I have one big supplier in Morocco, and we continued. I mean, COVID was a big challenge, and each country had its own challenge. And we continued to buy all during that time. So I have one supplier in Morocco. We get our goods in, and we have them in our warehouse. I have a woman down in Peru who I met when I was in Cusco. And she has an interesting story as well. She had a single mother in Peru, and they were pretty poor. And when she was a child, her mother would put her out on the sidewalk with a blanket selling keychains to tourists when she was maybe 5 years old. And so she learned how to interact with tourists. She learned English. She eventually did go to college, and then she had her own shop in one of the markets, and it was merchandised really well. And I could see she had a good idea for design. She was probably in her 20s when I met her. And I continued to, during COVID, buy from her and one other woman down there that kind of disappeared, but we managed to find her. But a lot of the markets where you would have stalls and tourist trade just completely shut down. That's what happened in Nepal also, is that the touristy area in Kathmandu completely shut down, and other suppliers, other felt suppliers that depended on tourism shut down. And we were able to provide jobs for some of these women that lost their jobs during that time. We also allowed some of them, we said it's going to be temporary in one case because I have two suppliers there, and the one supplier lost a lot of business. And we said, hey, we'll take your workers during this time and keep them working on our stuff. And then when, tourism peaks again, comes back, we'll give you your people back. So that worked out pretty well. They don't work as competitors. They work, their society kind of, everyone works together. They don't think like after the earthquake that everyone's going to go buy all of the baby formula and all of the toilet paper out of a store.
Right.
I'm going to buy what I need and I'm going to leave everything else so my neighbors have something. It's a very different thing, but yeah.
You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
Yeah, I want to go back to Nepal, actually, because the Winding Road then has gotten to the place where the Winding Road, you sponsor children to go to school with full scholarships as well. And that's all from this tiny first visit.
I was trying to think about, maybe it's an American way of thinking, but how do we make our place of employment someplace where people want to work, where people say, oh, you should go work for this supplier because what we do is we pay medical expenses to the workers because there isn't Blue Cross across the country. You just can't get health insurance, but it's not that uncommon for workers to take employers to take responsibility. So if someone says, hey, I have got a medical bill for my son or my husband or myself, we pay that. We pay bus fare into work. We are paying, we are paying for some of the kids to go to school. So that's a scholarship program. And I also did for my supplier a micro loan I told him, I said, he's building a new factory and he needed like $30,000 or $40,000. And I said, why don't you ask me and he's got two people like me in Europe that represent about 2% of his business. So I represent about 98% of his business. But I gave him a loan so that he could build this new factory that is earthquake proof and it's really clean and it has bathrooms so that we wouldn't be doing production with everybody sitting on a dirt floor, which is what's very common there to start a business, and people are just working outside on the dirt. So the beautiful new facility, the loan was, it's just an $8,000 loan, but it was interest free. I gave him 2 years to pay it off, and I only made him pay $7,000 instead of $8,000. So I gave him $1,000, and I told him the $7,000 could come as a deduction from a future invoice instead of actual cash, which means on the $7,000 that really only cost him about $3,000 because he was taking it off of his invoice to me, but his actual costs are about half of what the invoice is. So. Just trying to think about
so
things.
Lovely.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the COVID story is quite interesting because, my business went up, dipped a little during COVID, but the year after COVID, it was up maybe 55%. And I think what happened during COVID is I was at the New York Now show in February and the Atlanta Gift Show in January. And right when I was coming back from New York, it was on the news that there's some virus that's kind of being seen a little bit here and there in the US, and we should all be really concerned. And it just started being on the news every single day. And I thought, okay, I have like a huge stack of orders. I need to start packing and shipping as fast as I can because at some point, everything's going to shut down. And sure enough, one day, all the stores were closed. People were canceling their orders with me. My good customers kept their orders, but other people said, well, we don't know what's going to happen. So push the date in the future by 2 months or 3 months or cancel the order. But I had goods that I put into production in Nepal and Morocco and Peru, and I know all my suppliers, and I just was committed to them. And I said, I already gave you a deposit. I'm going to send you the balance due, and we're going to figure out how to get all these goods here because there's a lot of uncertainty. But I knew that if I didn't get my goods here and I didn't have anything to sell and I didn't have a business for a year, that I would be okay. But I thought for sure that that if these people didn't have jobs and they didn't have money, that they could starve, they could be on the street. So I sent all the money. And then as the time came to get everything shipped, the U.S. border closed, and there was a lot of uncertainty about, what exactly that meant, because the word was all Americans have to be back in the U.S. by this date. And we didn't know if cargo planes were going to be flying, if cargo could come in. We didn't know. So the day after the border closed, I forgot to say that I also do production in Bali, in Indonesia. And I had this shipment leaving Bali, and my shipper there was, do you want us to get it on a plane, because the airport in Denpasar, Bali is closed, and then we have to put it on a ship and get it to Jakarta. But we can do that. Okay, so I called my logistics people in Chicago, and I said, okay, is O'Hare Airport open for cargo? Are they receiving cargo today? Yes, they are. We just had a big plane come in from China. Okay, is U.S. Customs open, and can they clear customs? Yes, they are. So I go, let it fly. So this huge shipment, it's like $60,000 worth of handbags coming from Bali. I can track everything by tracking the flight. I can see in real time, like where the flight is. There's a way to do that. And it was going to land in Dubai. So it lands in Dubai and it disappears off the radar. It's gone. It's like $60,000 gone. And I then go, I bet they closed their airport. So I Google Dubai airport. This is, mind you, while I'm in bed at 2 a.m, tracking my stuff, and found that the airport closed, and that 2,000 people were stuck in the airport because they couldn't get back to the U.S. They couldn't get back to India. And then I go on to Google again, the United Arab Emirates website for the airport, and I see that they're going to run 2 cargo shipment to the U.S. One is going to come to Chicago O'Hare, luckily, and my goods did get here. So just a lot of things like that, all for like a year of just, everything getting stuck on ships, getting stuck on planes, getting stuck in the Chicago rail yards. But I did get everything here. And then when the stores could not get goods and all the shelves were empty here, people were calling me in a panic, retailers, do you have goods? And I said, yes, I do. So that's why my business did well, as I just managed, thick or thin, just to get everything here. And I did. Yep.
And keeping all those people employed during that time is just so wonderful.
What a tremendous story. Hey, Marla, What do you do for fun? I mean, oh my gosh, it seems like this is like an overwhelming thing that you do almost all the time. But, what do you kick back and say, okay, what do I want to do for fun?
Well, luckily, the things that I love doing in life are all related to product development and travel. And
just like artists, yes.
I'm obsessed and passionate about what I do, and I work a lot. But yes, I kayak and I ride bikes and I travel. But yeah. I'm lucky that I figured out how to create a job for myself that just completely fires on every angle of what I love doing. So
where haven't you gone that you want to discover? Like, what is because I know so much of your time is spent traveling to Nepal and Morocco and keeping all of those connections. But again,
I don't really, there's no place else I want to go for sourcing, because I'm 61, and I also want to say, ladies, don't tell you that you're too old to do anything, but it takes an awful lot to go somewhere, do the intelligence work of discovering new suppliers, figuring out who's going to work and who's not. So I'm just more or less now focusing in on the one.
I was thinking about pure pleasure. Yeah,
I can't think about pure pleasure at all. But there's places, I do love Indonesia. I love Bali. I love Nepal. So I love Peru. So
do you still do any kind of consulting? I mean, that kind of is your background, that you did that for a long time. Did someone say, well, how do I do my small business maybe locally? And would you give them some advice on that, or just plain advice?
I might give plain advice, but I wouldn't take on a big project of consulting with someone because I don't have time to do that. It's too complicated. It's too much detail to just tell someone how you created something over 12 years of time. To boil that down into an hour is pretty hard.
Exactly. And we kind of touched on this, but do you do anything creative yourself anymore? Or, you've just concentrated on what you're doing with these folks, which is a tremendous thing that you're doing.
I do. I studied photography when I lived in San Francisco, and I do photography more for myself. And luckily, because I have the skills in the background, I can do a lot of my own product photography also.
Very good. Well, we've got about a minute and a half left. We want to know kind of your website, how to contact you. What kind of products would we see there if we went to your website and, contact information?
Well, my website is mostly wholesale, and my business is that I sell to retail stores. My website is called shopthewindingroad.com, and there is a contact me section, but for consumers, you'd have to maybe contact me and I can tell you what retail store it's in, but we don't have a direct-to-consumer website. And
what are some examples of the retail stores you might be able to be found in real quick?
Well, we're J. Paul Getty Museum, SF MoMA, in the Chicago. Well, I live in Geneva, Illinois, so we're in the Little Traveler. So it's a lot of fair trade stores. Yep.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming on Art on the Air. What a tremendous story you have and sharing with our audience. I mean, we really didn't have to ask any questions. We just kind of teed you up and let you go.
Beautiful.
What a beautiful story. That's Marla Showfer, and you can find her website and everything like she just gave you, Marla. Thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, so much so. A complete pleasure.
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at WVLP.org, and every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our Spotlight interviews are also heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Radio. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operations for Lakeshore Public Radio, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker, and for WVLP, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art on the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.